Hey guys, welcome back to the 10-8 Fightcast. Dylan McGrath, Trevor Hayes here, off of another fight weekend here in the Carolinas. A great one in many ways. I know that you had a mix, like the thrill and the agony this weekend.
Oh yeah, it was. I was like, and even like my students over there, I was like, hey, it be what it be.
It do be what it be.
It sucks and it's frustrating, but hey, you know what? Like Talia learned a fuck ton. Sasha said, like, hey, thank you. Like, Sasha is a cool ass chick. Like, you know, she like reached out to Talia. They talked back and forth. Like, they trained together. Like, so it's like still great to see that, you know. And, and like some great wins. You know,
Fight 413, another great event, and bigger than ever, really.
Yeah, I loved that layout.
Yeah,
man. That was really. I didn't know what it was going to look like until we showed up.
Right.
And I liked the catwalk. I liked the curtain. I liked how they keep the lights down. Like they do a good job for what we say before of what amateur fights should be like. Right. You know? That little catwalk is kind of cool. Like
and,
you know,
and that's like big fight feel.
But I mean, we all know it is what it is. You know, like this is
what it is.
Like it is what it is, and like I still think like that is just enough of what you need.
Right.
I feel, you know, like they do a good job of like they don't try too hard.
Yeah, they don't go exorbitant.
They focus on like atmosphere, like lights down low, something to focus on fighters coming out,
smoke machine,
like simple. You know, like that's
the basics.
The basics. And they have great media content to go on top of that.
So Jason McGinnis?
Yeah, like I think like they are just kind of showing how amateur shows should be done.
And they're only on number 13. Like that's kind of blows my mind too. Like I think about how we do a lot of shows for Conflict MMA, and they're on their 50th show, 51st coming up. And I think that by the time Fight For It gets to its 50th show, I can't imagine what it's going to look like. I mean, it already has like the biggest feel of any amateur-based show. Like the Conflict shows, they have pros, but Fight For It's been really focused on the amateurs.
Yes.
Especially, you know, the last like 7 or 8 shows they've done have been mostly amateur shows.
Well, and you're seeing, you know, these Fight For It veterans going on. Like you have like Brian Battle is a great example of like, you know, people have come up through the Fight For It, you know, show now, and like 13 shows in, like Brian fought for he fought for a couple as an amateur. Once or twice as a pro, or once as a pro.
He made his pro debut with Fight For It,
but he fought a couple times for him as an amateur.
Right.
And we always see him involved like through like with his teammates here and stuff like that. And so, you know, that's a great thing.
I don't think he's ever missed a card that I've been at.
No, I know he's always there.
Yeah, because they always have people that are competing there, and if there's somebody from Highest Sun on the card, Brian's going to be there.
Trevor Logan wants to go pro.
Yeah,
I know that. You know, he's very like he just made a big boy move.
We'll get to that.
Him like
we will get to
pro.
We'll get to Trevor Logan.
But Fight For It. I think they're doing the right thing for
sure. And I think that the first fight we really can talk about to some length here is probably going to be Danny Zia versus Mio Johnson, who made his debut at Matrix MMA. I thought that was a very fun fight,
and it was like kind of how we called it. Like Danny was going to be a appreciate that
ant on the wall there, guys.
No, like Danny Zia was a dog in the fight.
Hell yeah, it was.
Yeah, and then the Matrix fighter had the good like outside striking, but it was like Danny's pressure like still stayed on him. Like he didn't allow himself to get too jammed up.
Exactly.
And he kept getting back to his range and fighting well. And Danny just stayed in his face the whole time as we expected.
But
Danny looked a lot more patient.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, he looked refined. He looked very refined, and his striking has been refined steadily as
like his first kickboxing match, he was punching like a wrestler with boxing gloves on, and now he was just kind of sitting back behind. He was like, okay, I'm gonna go forward, but like, you know, from here to here, not here to here.
But what I will say about Mio is that for him to come in there and go the distance and look that good against somebody with Danny's experience, and he's debuting,
for a debut,
no sanctioned fights either on his record of
like that's a tough fight.
He's a guy who's been training boxing for a long time. And never like took a sanctioned boxing fight.
Oh wow!
And so then started training kickboxing, and then like as soon as he got into it,
he did have great outside range. Like he knew how to. He was like
greensmanship.
He knew like from boxing how long his jab hand is, how long his cross hand is.
He's a long guy,
and he knew to keep his lead leg outside that lead hand the whole time, and he did a great job. It was cool to see that for a debut.
And we had your student Hunter Perez taking on David Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
Lemon Pepper Hot, one of the best nicknames
I've
ever heard in all of fighting. And this guy was freaking tall.
So tall. Hunter Perez is 6 feet tall.
Yeah,
so,
and this guy was like 6'5". Yeah, and I was like, whoa, Hunter, what are you like? But this kid was lanky and long, and I thought Hunter would struggle a bit more with the distance.
Coach Daniel, and it's dope to see him like start getting to his groove as a coach. Like he's someone that like Walker and I were talking. Like Dane and I were talking, and Walker came in, and Daniel was like, "Whoa, cool! Like, he's gonna come up for Walker's seminar." But one time Walker and I did a seminar together with our buddy Jim, and he was there attending. He's attended my seminar in Charlotte, so I've been like, watching him like go from a dude starting off as a coach now like having his own little fight team too.
Yeah.
And I told him
they look good here.
And I told him like I thought you did a good job with the guy's range. Like the guy had good composure and good range, and I was like, ooh, like because Daniel said he was like, man, we knew it was going to be pressure, and I was like, well, okay, thank you, I appreciate that. And and his guy had good composure for that pressure, so that was good to see. Yeah.
And then we got to see Hunter bust out a little karate.
Just the rolling thunder around the world.
Just a little karate.
No, he told me before the fight, I'm going to do a rolling thunder. Like it's the last thing I'm going to do in the fight, and I was like, and I just stared at him, and I was like, maybe, like I don't know.
I don't know if you informed Hunter of this beforehand, but it's a little hard to hit a rolling thunder on a guy who's 6'5". Right?
I know.
You're probably going to rolling thunder his cup.
Maybe like rolling thunder into the ref on accident, man.
Yeah. Dale can maybe take one of those.
But Hunter did a great job in that fight. He came into that fight. We didn't talk about it on the pre-show, but he went into that fight with a broken foot.
I know.
And it was one of those things where I was like, hey man, we gotta be really careful. Like you're gonna have to use this leg enough.
Yeah, very sparingly, right?
And so he messed it up in like a bare knuckle Kyokushin tournament. He took 3 weeks of like just still moving around but doing what he could with that foot. And it was still like the right game plan. Like he won a kickboxing match with hooks.
Yeah, definitely.
Some good sweeps.
He was able to touch him with the hooks, which is interesting to me because the guy's obviously so.
I just told Hunter in the fight. I was like, hey, just punch above your headgear, and he just went, okay.
And he was having problems with the headgear,
that
right?
Headgear, like, I was like, okay, we got to get the top 10 headgear for you. Like, that thicker headgear
I was commenting on this during the previous fight, Danny Zeta versus Vemiel Johnson, how not all headgear is created equal.
No,
because Danny had the Venom headgear on that has the ear pockets, and it's just like perfect. It looks like fucking Master Chief's helmet. Yeah. And then Vemiel Johnson's got the Rocky II headgear on. That's just like falling apart. Yeah. And he's got dreads, and those guys always have a problem keeping the headgear on anyway. So you got to think spring a little bit on that.
I told Hunter like, hey, like, just look at his chest and punch up. And he's like, well, his chest is right in front of me. And I said, exactly. Just punch up and over. And that's even like me as a shorter guy, like, I had to learn that the hard way of looking at the boxer's cross. Like, look, if I can see that person's chest, I'm always punching up.
Yeah.
So I'm always keeping my head out of the way. And so Hunter was just okay. He just knew that every time he put his Euro hooks over, that it was going to find its way. And he used that to really just kind of do the damage and push in and just keep that pressure up. Like Hunter
knew,
all
pressure.
And Hunter just knew, and it's like, hey, like if we're not going to have volume, we're going to have pressure behind a heavy defense.
Yeah, I think
it's tough to work behind. And he had counters ready every time David threw. Hunter was ready to fire back.
Yeah. Definitely.
I think it's tough, but to beat a longer guy, sometimes you have to have that strike thrown. It's like they're gonna have the if you come in, you're losing that range fight. You have to wait for them to throw and counter back to make something happen.
Do you also find that once you get inside on those longer guys, that's one of the first things that they have to learn is how to get that range back? Because it seems like once Hunter was inside, David really couldn't touch him again because he was like...
He was going for and like Hunter just did the right thing of like where every time he went in, he just found, little frames to clamp on. I was like, hey man, find those frames and keep them tight. And and I was like, just shut him down from there. Like, don't even let him like punch. It was just, he did a good job of just trying to shut him down on the inside because if Hunter did go into strikes on the inside, that gives David opportunities to exit. So when you go to the inside, it's in the rules. Grab, and then the ref is going to separate.
I was going to ask, why on the call sheet, was Hunter listed as a chance Muay Thai fighter? And
because we just keep it as like,
you want to just
it's kind of just a split thing. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, like we'll be bringing in a BJJ program, and so that'll be like the elements of it. Like when it's the BJJ program, it's gonna BJJ competition. It's gonna be that.
Right.
If it's something like pancration or sambo or MMA, it'll be hometown MMA. And like my buddy Dilly, like I'm gonna be helping him start his own like boxing program. Yeah. So exactly, you know, if it's like I just want it to be a true, you know, little MMA school. Yeah.
For sure. I know we've never really talked about this on the podcast, so we'll just touch on it briefly. But like going back to what we were saying about headgear, there are a few things in this world where you usually get exactly what you pay for.
Yeah.
One of them is fight equipment.
Right? Oh yeah, Hunter told me, hey, yeah, that headgear's $40, and I went, oh, I can tell.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Jesus.
If you see a pair of shin guards or a pair of gloves that's like plus $200, there's probably a reason. Yes. They're probably going to be the best gloves or shin guards you ever.
I tell people like the top 10 headgear, really solid headgear, doesn't get in the way, and it's still like legal. I do want to take a look at that headgear that Danny Zaya had.
Yeah,
like, I didn't
sweet.
I didn't look at it too much.
Yeah, it was like it seemed like it just fit perfectly.
I've seen some like almost like rugby style. Like,
that's what it was like.
Oh,
it was like a rugby style helmet, but full face on. You know, like it came around the chin and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you know, Venom makes good gear. I think the most, if you're talking about affordable gear, I think Toro has really good deals on like things like shin guards and gloves. Like their stuff is well made and reasonably priced. But what would you say the most like top tier brand when it comes to shin guards and gloves are, as someone who's probably worn 100 pair of them?
Man, I tell people like it's all about. I think some people in the American market are just dumb and look at a big price tag as a good piece of equipment. I put on some $200 shin guards that I'm just like, no, I'm good. Like I'm fine. Like or like you know 150 shin guards and I'm like no, I'll get like a pair of like six. Like I got my custom one made by Cage Side.
Right.
And they fit and they're great. And I sell those for $60.
The Cage Side shin guards are great.
Like they are. And you know, so it's all about simple, doesn't slip off, and protects you.
Yes.
You know, people will say like the best glove to go with, and like you know, Trevor Whitman's like Onyx gloves. Those things are literal science, like on your hands. So I say like if you want to go in on like a glove to like protect your hands for a career, like those Onyx gloves are probably the best ones. I haven't seen the shin guards or the bubble glove he made, but I can imagine Trevor Whitman has some Frankenstein science inside that. But,
I'm kind of partial to.
I tell people like, hey, anything around like that $90.
Right.
Is something to look at. Like that's
the Venoms of the world.
Like, Venom, like Fairtex. Like you
I was gonna
like,
say,
you know,
like you can get some of the Yokow stuff, some of the cheaper Yokow stuff. You can get,
but like there's even some like there's a long time that Yokow's 16-ounce gloves were 12 ounces.
Right,
and
exactly.
10 ounces, and people are like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of like bulky shin guards. It's also people have preference.
Me too.
Know? Like, yeah.
I'm really partial to Combat Corner for the same reason that you would be partial to Trevor Whitman's gloves, because they're designed by kind of a guy who's a striking genius in Dwayne, and I think that the shin guards that I have for him are very minimalist, but they like just don't move. Right. That's my biggest annoyance when it comes to shin guards.
Mine have like that.
Around.
They have the anti-grip slips.
Yes,
so
those are great.
They are primarily like just for striking. Like they're definitely not going to. It has to be like a lot for it to slip around.
Yeah,
and then like I don't use them for like MMA practice, but you can do very light work with it, and it won't slide around.
The Combat Corner ones are made for MMA, so they like have the full sleeve in the back and everything.
Oh yeah,
and they're really. I mean, I wear them for everything because they're thick enough to do actual kickbox sparring with, but they just never move. They never slip ever.
Right.
So I really like those too. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because I know we have some people who listen to the podcast who are not as familiar, maybe looking to get into mixed martial arts or training, and it's just like, don't buy Everlast from Dick's Sporting Goods.
Yeah,
just spend a little bit more, maybe $20 or $30 more, and you can get something from Cage Side right here in the Carolinas.
I got some custom-made lace-ups from them, like things that like Boomer and I went over with like for a while, and I love those gloves.
And maybe soon you'll even be able to buy some 10-8 Fightcast gloves.
There you go.
Who knows? Yeah. It's in the works. Anyway, moving on this card here. There were some interesting kickboxing debuts. I really was impressed with the B, Ali Haji Mohammed from Matrix MMA. This guy was fast as hell, and he was long, right? And he was throwing combos, like very, very well strung together combos, always finishing with a kick, which I know you're a big fan of.
Yeah, and it's Brandon. Was that
Brandon Sanders?
Brandon Sanders from
Carolina Kickboxing.
Yeah. Brandon, he was ready to throw punches, but he had issues with the range of the B.
Haji Mohammed.
Haji Mohammed.
You say Ali.
Ali. Okay. I was like, man, I'm just gonna stick to Ali. Sorry, Ali. But it caught me for a second. I was like, ooh. But no, Ali did a great job of just staying long and settling on his shots.
Definitely.
He wasn't too overcommitted. He wasn't falling back from his shots. and Brandon was just going like, God damn, this guy's long, but he was ready to still fire back and behind, but he was landing like one shot to Ali's like 3 or 4, and that's like, that's gonna keep you up a little bit on the scorecards.
And just the head movement from Ali was nice because Brandon seems like he's a very powerful puncher, and it was just like very hard for him to land cleanly on Ali because Ali was just always kind of moving off the line, always looking for that next strike, taking 1 to give 3, like you said.
Yeah,
I was pretty impressed with him for a debut.
But Brandon's composure was really solid coming forward into that fight.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's
like
CKA. They kind of had a bad night,
but it's like one of those things of like, landing those single shots is good. You got to make that person wobble a bit for it to count.
100%.
And I want to say, Zion, one of the teens from CK, I thought he did great in his fight. I thought that he won the first and third handedly in that fight. Second round, I don't know that he don't think he did enough, but like that fight, I thought like Zion, like that's a great example of someone throwing power and combinations. Like Zion never threw like much of a naked shot, except some like chopping low kicks, but then he'd always follow back up like a step or 2 later. Like, Zion is a really sharp kid to watch.
I think he definitely, certainly won the first round. The third round, like you said, it was more
towards the second
him,
round that he still had. Like, there were 2 rounds that I was like, man, I really feel like he had 2 rounds in that fight.
Yeah, I feel like the last 2 rounds were closer than the first for sure. But I thought that the judging for the entire event was a little off.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to name names, but I saw one judge who was looking at her phone throughout the event.
No, there was
and also 85,000 years old.
There was
like
there was
Mesozoic
an 80-year-old judge there. Yeah,
and she was very distracted during the event. And I'm looking right across the cage from her during me watching the fight. And I can't help but look at the judges sometimes because I always wonder what they're thinking, especially in situations where I know it's kind of subjective what's actually what's actually happening and who's actually scoring. I'm always looking at them, and several times I just looked and saw her just on her phone, and I was like, oh my god, and sure enough,
she looked up what is judging and found a baking recipe.
Sure enough, we had a few decisions that were a little suspect. But it's always hard to tell.
I didn't pay attention to some of the decisions. To be honest, I think I recapped the fights today.
Yeah.
It took me a couple days to kind of like mentally wind down from the weekend, and I was fast forwarding. So I'm like, oh wait, is that who won the? So I'm trying to remember like who won these fights.
One of the lone finishes, I think the lone finish in the kickboxing card was Marcus Gonzalez.
Oh, that was insanity. Okay, that was absolute bonkers. That was
might have been the kickboxing fight tonight because Quan came on early, strong.
That was an anime fight, man.
Yes, exactly. That was definitely an anime fight, and Quan came out to throw down.
Dude, super heavy in the first round. So I remember, I was pretty busy with my fighters that day, and I walked by, halfway through the second round, and I was like, wow, this place is on absolute fire right now.
Yeah.
What is happening? And I just remember seeing that last flurry from Gonzalez live. But I went back and rewatched it today. And, oh my God, I see why that place got so loud when I was going to the bathroom. I could hear them throughout the building.
Well, Marcus Gonzalez seemed like when he did his walkout, he seemed like he had a lot of people there to support him in the first place. And then you see him
and he got
so tested in the first round.
Yes, he got dropped by that right hand. Mm-hmm. That gave Quan 10-8 for that round. Gonzalez also got kicked right in the throat at one point.
Yeah, that was tough.
Oh, bro, Quan was coming out heavy, but then you still see Gonzalez was he kept coming back a little bit. He found a knee in that first round that Quan really didn't like, and I think that was when Quan started to doubt himself.
Well, it's just...
and the end of that first round, you could see Quan was spitting out that mouthpiece, going "Ooh, this is tough."
When you come out like he did, how many body shots does it really take to drain you at that point?
Yeah.
I mean, he already had expended.
It looked like he was powerlifter breathing.
Yeah, definitely. Especially,
yeah.
I mean, that's what me and Taylor were notating on the commentary. Is when you fight that crazy, how long can you do it? And most guys, even at that weight, it's not long. It's not long at all. But I would say that. Landon Bush returned in
no, and then they went to the second, and it didn't go past the second, right?
He's quit it, he was on the stool, and he couldn't
that second round was wild. I was like, wait, did we skip past
it? Is it Jason Collins?
Jason Collins was
he called it going into the third because he was
Quan wasn't getting up.
He wasn't really getting up off the stool fast enough. But
Gonzalez did a great job of going back to the body with knees in the second round.
He
and at some point, literally flying into him. Like, he got kicked out of the air midair in the first round, and then he still just went flying into the clinch into the second round. And I think Quan just was not ready for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I thought that the fight was... I thought the fight was just one of those fights where you really feel like anything can happen.
Yes.
As the fight goes on, you're just like, this is so crazy that I think... Because both guys in that second round were damaged, and it's like, yeah, Quan is tired, but if he can find one more burst in him, who knows?
Yeah, Gonzalez really wanted that fight.
But Gonzalez just like...
more prepared.
Exactly. More prepared, ready to go the distance, and had that instinct to stay a little bit more composed after a frantic first round. Like, just hang in there. Right. You know, so many people would have let that get to them in the moment in their debut, especially when you're that young of a kid in there for the first time fighting a grown man in Juan Chavez. It's pretty tough, but he held tough and ended up picking up the finish. And that was one of my favorite moments of the night. Was that moment when the crowd realized that the fight was off, because they just exploded for that kid. Another fight that I thought was really fun was Landon Bush returning to Fight For It against another Fight For It veteran, Nathan the Butcher Burwell. I just thought it was a fun back and forth fight.
It was great back and forth.
And I just thought Landon always brings it. I mean, he's just a dog. So
he does not give a flying fuck.
No, certainly not.
He really doesn't.
Certainly not.
Yeah. And then Champion and someone else. It was Champion and there's another.
Weston Champion and Connor Flasker. They had a great fight too.
That fight looked like you took two of the same fighters in a video game, and you just let the computers fight each other. Like, it looked like you take one of the UFC games and you let two of the same characters like fight each other.
Yes.
That's what it looked like.
Let's see what happened.
They literally, I was like, are the same buttons being mashed? Is there a glitch going on? Like, it looked like the exact same person was fighting the other person. Like, it was so weird. Like, they were fighting each other. I couldn't, that was weird. I was wanting to point that out, but a great fight nonetheless. It was a fun fight to watch. You know? Yeah,
Weston Champion, I kind of confused him and Landon because they fought on the same card previously.
Yeah, that threw me off too.
That kind of throws me off a little bit. But, just fun fights overall for the kickboxing card. Not a lot of finishes, but with the headgear, the shin guards, all that, etc., it's like, sometimes that's just going to happen. You're not going to get a lot of finishes. But the one we did get was pretty great. Going into these two title fights we wanted to talk about, we had Brent Williams taking on Omar Hassan.
Man, took Omar out of his game big time. Like, I saw Omar earlier that day. Like, I know both these kids. I'm like, man, I'm excited to see you fight. Like, get those kicks going and stuff like that. And Brent's like, man, I'm going to dog him with my hands. And, like, Brent was calling for, like, how he was going to shut down some of Omar's kicks, and he executed it. And he took Omar out of his game, like, early. Like, Omar, like, hung in there.
He just got inside that range where we were talking about in the pre-fight show, where you can get inside that I don't give a fuck range.
And he was just, like, there's the two ranges. Like, if you're a kicker, you need that person to be, like, away. If you're a puncher, you need to be inside those kicks. Yeah. You know? So, and Brent just got inside and stayed in there the whole time.
In there the whole time.
Man, what a dog in that fight. Like, and I think that's a great... I was talking to Brent afterwards, and I told him that was a great show of just, like, your composure in a fight. How, like, you were doing all the right things over and over, and you weren't exactly, like... He was hunting for finishes the right way.
Yeah.
Like, it's... I tell people it's kind of good to look for finishes at, like, a 75% or, like, an 80% throw. Like, if he had, like, overcommitted... Like, those are times for people to, like, reset to a point where you tire themselves out. Yeah. Like, so if you still miss on, like, an 80% or 75%, it's a little bit easier to pull it back.
Yeah.
And he was never really trying to, like, he didn't load anything up. He committed, but he wasn't, like, starting off the wrong side. Like, he was never trying to pull back and then fire. Everything he threw was from home and, like, fast and tight.
I think he would have finished Omar had the officiating not been saving Omar. Like, I feel like the officiating was very like overly cautious to the point of, like, protecting Omar from being finished, in the sense that, like, not breaking the clinch up, just allowing Omar to manipulate the glove directly, which is supposedly against the K1 rule.
Yeah, I didn't really catch that.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of, like, reaching, and then it got really egregious in the third and fourth round.
The rule sets for kickboxing, though. Me and we had a conversation in the back. They said, all right, these are essentially K1 rules. You guys are allowed to sweep and do this. And we were just like, Walker and I went, what? And like myself, Walker, and Hunter were a little confused because in Hunter's fight, he was going for sweeps and dumps.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the only kickboxer I think that went for sweeps and dumps because they said in the back,
Sandoval.
Sandoval
was dumping
yes,
Rollins
that's
all over
right.
the place.
He did. But no, Sandoval, great fight.
We'll get to that in just a second.
Like in the back, like Walker and I were like, wait, so we can clinch for 3 to 5 seconds? And I was like, so is this modified Muay Thai? And even I just said, I was like, Hunter, do one, see what they say, and we'll find out.
Right.
Like, because technically in like KO1 Glory rules, like, you're not supposed to sweep.
And they'll tell you, like...
But in the back, they said, you can do sweeps, and we just went, okay. Like, it wasn't something we trained for, but we just went, yeah, why not?
I mean, we do it in the gym.
Yeah, so, yeah.
We know how to sweep people.
Yeah.
I just thought that the clinching was egregious in that fight.
Yeah,
and
that
I felt
fight, like, there was a lot more. I remember there was a lot more holding on.
And I feel like it was clearly stalling, and I feel like there were times where Jason stepped in and asked for a break, and Omar still held on.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to just be cheating with the ref's help. But when you go against the referee,
see the frustration on Brent's face,
right? And especially
he was like, he could see the finish coming.
The 2 knockdowns that occurred that I thought were legitimate knockdowns, the referee acted like they were slips and actually helped Omar to his feet.
Right.
And I'm just like, what the hell is going on here? Like, what's going on? And it just makes me wonder, like, what goes through these referees' minds sometimes.
I thought Jason was a pretty solid ref throughout, and looking back, I was like, oh yeah, there could have been a few more calls.
Yeah, I mean, he was good, he was really good in the main event. I mean, he's good in a lot of the fights I see him in. But everybody has a bad fight, everybody has a bad night at the office, and I thought that was not his best hour. But I'm sure he would agree.
But he still did some great officiating throughout the night.
Of
But
course.
I was like, man, I kind of forgot about that because like we're all caught up in like there were so many like I sat in the audience for that fight and the
next fight,
and the next fight, like because I had been in that building since like before 1 p.m. and I was like, I gotta get out of this locker room, and I watched those and then. Yeah, and I think like I sit with my students, I was like, man, that was a great fight.
Yeah, seriously.
And we all got caught up watching that fight, so I think I was missing some of that.
Yeah, two very dominant performances in the title fight. Brent kind of taking all 5 rounds there, and then Cameron Sandoval coming in, taking all 5 rounds in his title fight.
Yes,
I mean, we kind of forebode it. We kind of foreshadowed it.
He just
this
slowly,
kid is amazing. This kid's a great talent.
This kid's a stud, and he intelligently fought for 5 rounds.
Yes.
Like, he was just slowly taking things away from Brandon. Brandon started out really strong, fast, having combinations, trying to stay in front, and Cameron did a great job of really capitalizing on angles and pulling Brandon back into shots. Yeah. Sticking him in place and then moving back off from that. So, really just kind of taking away Brandon's straight line.
And it was very interesting to me that how he fought in Charleston when he was fighting MMA and comparing that to this fight. A very different approach, and it's just like shows that this kid can he can do it all. He's not reliable. He's not relying on one particular strategy. He can take his time. He can pick you apart. That's what he did in this fight. In the other fight, he just buzzsawed through the guy in like a minute. It was over fast. So I thought he could come out and do that same thing against Rollins, but there would be a greater risk because Rollins is a little bit more experienced.
Right.
And sure enough, I feel like Coach Kelly and the strategy and the fight IQ here was very respectful of Rollins' skill.
Absolutely.
And they were like, we have to intelligently pick him apart. And I thought Rollins very much held his own in those first couple rounds.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you just saw as the fight went on, you see the experience. You see the ring generalship. You saw Brandon's legs were getting a bit more fatigued going that 3rd round.
The body shots.
And the body shots really just kind of just kept him in place. And Cameron just kept taking away that straight line that Brandon needed to fight on.
Yeah, I saw Brandon
needs to fight on. Yeah.
In the back after, and the body shots were really affecting him.
Oh yeah, that was a lot of a fight to watch, man. There's a lot going on in that fight, and it's still a great showing from both guys.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think that Brandon's got a lot of experience in this realm, and he's a guy who does a lot of tournaments, and he wants to be a kickboxer and get paid to do it, or paid to coach
and getting
it,
to that point where you're like at 10 to 12 fights in on kickboxing, you start running those guys that are putting the whole fight together the whole time. And Cameron Cameron put the whole fight together the whole time, where Brandon was fighting parts of the fight.
He fought a guy who could be a pro right now if he wanted to be.
Yeah,
has the skill set and could be a champion in a bigger promotion than fight for it if people were aware of him.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So, I mean, when you're Brandon Rollins and you're fighting this many people and you're putting yourself out there, eventually you will come across that guy. And Cameron Sandoval's just that guy now.
Yeah.
And I think it's only a matter of time before I saw somebody say pretty soon he'll be beating up your favorite UFC fighter. And I was like, yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
I could see that not being very far off for him, especially with somebody like Kelly in his corner and somebody who has that network already. People know his name. I just think the sky is the limit for Cameron Sandoval, and it was awesome to see him pick up another belt, kind of becoming a weekly occurrence for him these days.
Yeah.
And nothing
He's
looks
a kid
better.
on a mission.
Definitely a man on a mission. There were a couple of youth MMA fights, and I found them to be more interesting than the combat jiu-jitsu fights. Like I had more fun.
Didn't see I see a lot of it going on. Like I follow Chase Gamble. I think it's awesome to see what he's doing with like these youth pancration tournaments and stuff like that.
If MMA was in the Olympics, it would be a very similar rule
Well,
set.
pancration used to be in the Olympics,
right.
But this is forever ago when giant wars were more of a common thing. When they had like swords and fisticuffs to fight with, but. Yeah, pancration is like a really old Olympic sport. People are trying to get combat sambo into the Olympics, and pancration and combat sambo are both very MMA-based, like kind of ways of competing.
And the USFL rule set's not far off from either of those arts either.
Yeah,
and I think that it's just fun. It's just fun. I
go
go back and forth on it,
see,
but the more of these fights that I watch, the better I feel about the kids being in there, because the more that I watch, the more I feel like they are safe and they're being taken care of in there, and that the rule set is designed to protect them, which is the most important thing. And more importantly, they just go after it so hard. They really
do. Yeah.
They go after it so hard. And it's not that I hate combat jiu-jitsu. Seth asked me on the mic, he said, I was listening to 10-8 Fightcast, and it sounded like you hate combat jiu-jitsu. And it's not that, and apparently there were people that were salty that I was commentating combat jiu-jitsu if I don't like it. And it's like, I hate to break it to you guys, I've commentated a lot of fights that I thought were stinkers, that I hated commentating, but I'm that good of an actor. I can't put up that facade for combat jiu-jitsu. It's not that I hate it, I love jiu-jitsu. I just think that it is a attempt to make jiu-jitsu more palatable to the masses, and also kind of like just add something that doesn't really need to be there for jiu-jitsu. Like, if you don't think jiu-jitsu is entertaining enough to have on your fight card, just don't have it. Just have like a Muay Thai super fight. Have a full rules fight.
I see it as a way for people to promote, like, they're starting to get a lot of like these UFC fighters.
Now that is something that's interesting,
and they're getting that involved into it.
It's like a middle ground,
and I can see that as like, I think it's a good middle ground for like some of these strikers to get into stuff like that. Like, it's cool to see that they can let like Tony Lutz beat Craig Jones in a no-gi grappling thing for CFFC. I'm like, cool, let them do it.
Right.
It's way safer to do that than letting MMA fighters take kickboxing matches and stuff like that.
As we've seen how that works out.
Like it's
so many times over.
Well, like they do that in Bellator,
right?
And like that's a tough thing for them to go back and forth, and that really fucks up a person's best like years of their pro career and stuff like that. I see, like, where combat jiu-jitsu is something that is definitely something that everyone needs to keep working on. It's a bit safer to work on instead of getting elbowed and kneed in the face. Okay, some palm striking and submissions. I think it's a good way to see some of these like higher level pros stay loose and just find something else to make money off of.
Yes, if there's money in it, go for it.
Because I'm seeing some of these UFC guys are like, they're getting sponsors that they don't have in the UFC for some of these. So like, hey, you know what? If you can get $10,000 on a weekend to slap a dude, go for it.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, if you do your ground karate stuff.
I get it. I get it. I get it. I just think that like there are also, there's always going to be grappling super fights, and there were grappling super fights that paid money before combat jiu-jitsu came along. I think people are impressed by the novelty of it more than anything. Right. And it doesn't seem like to me, it seems to me that it is for people who already know a lot about jiu-jitsu, which is counterintuitive to what I feel like the mission statement of it was, just to make it more palatable to the casuals. Because to me, watching it live and being there in the crowd, essentially, and having to hear them, it was like a golf course in there. Like, nobody's more entertained by it because there's slaps. Frankly, there's not a lot of slapping. Frankly, it doesn't happen very often, and the crowd doesn't really respond to it like they would a ground and pound.
Yeah, they see them like, oh, they're doing that thing they said they could do. Okay.
Right.
I
feel like it is kind of a little bit of a novelty for the people who already appreciate the sport and already know what the people are capable of. They just want to see, like, well, what does this guy look like when he can slap too? You know, like, I don't know.
I mean, I just see it. I'm kind of like, yeah, if you want to do it.
I'm glad Toro hasn't gotten into it yet. I'm glad Toro doesn't have a slap fighting.
I'm the guy that's letting his students go fight in Kyokushin tournaments, dude. I'm just like, I know, man, go do it.
100%. And I was talking to Taylor about bare knuckle. Too.
I was trying to get one of my students, Tavion, on there for a combat jiu-jitsu.
We've talked in the past about how I feel a little iffy about bare knuckle too, and I was talking to Taylor about it, and before the show started, the pre-show, and she made me kind of realize a couple things about bare knuckle, that it does have like a place in the world, and there is a reason why people want to do it and why people want to watch it. And I feel the same about karate combat. People miss that kind of combat sport.
Yeah.
And with bare knuckle, it's a very like primal thing. It goes back to the roots of this whole thing that we do. But with that, you know, karate combat is like a movie.
is like an extreme spectacle. Like
exactly.
It's a legit fight, but it's still as much of a spectacle of like how bare knuckle has like the personalities and the intros. It's almost like a mix of like pro wrestling and fighting at the same time, of like the atmosphere of like the wildness of it. And I'm just like, oh, but it's still legitimate
100%.
fighting. But like it's like seeing like Taylor and Tony doing. These are like the perfect people for bare knuckle.
100%.
Like they're full time savages.
Shout outs to Loco Soto picking up a second round finish.
Yeah.
Brutalizing his opponent for the first round.
But like for his personality, like he's well accepted by the bare knuckle community.
Yeah, people
Same
love
thing
him.
with Taylor.
And the entertaining guy is a great guy.
And I'm just like, oh yeah, hell yeah, go do it.
All right, and moving on to the MMA portion of the card, much quicker series of events, lots of finishes. MMA never fails to deliver on the action, and things got started off in a big way. Khalil Pettiford from Elevate MMA taking on Brandon Sweet Tooth Johnson from Team Rock, picking up the first round head kick KO. Shades of your boy Roland Mazzell. I mean, it looked like the same setup that I've seen Roland hit people with all the time.
Yep.
Measured him out with the jab, and Brandon just stayed in the same spot.
He measured him with a side kick early on.
Yes.
That made Brandon really hesitate on, like, he's like, damn, am I inside or outside? Because there's a punch and a kick from very far away. And it made him kind of, like, overreact enough on the outside for Khalil to go, opening, and he just kept his knee pointed to his center line, and he was like, I'll just pop it up and in.
It's so interesting how fast that fight was, but how much stuff was packed in from Khalil's point of, like, dialing that KO in, like how fast he was able to just calibrate everything, you know. Obviously, we've talked about it before. We talked about it on the broadcast.
Like, hey, take your time before your first fight.
Yes, yeah. And he took his time, and it's paying off. I mean, this kid is obviously a talent, and for 170, he's a nightmare. I mean, he's so long and tall, and he looks like he should be at 185, but he just comes in very easily and very, you know, no problems with the cut on the way to 170. He's very athletic, and man, he can swing, dude. He can hurt people for sure. Didn't even need the grappling, over in a flash. Had some debuts here from Jake Morris. We've seen him fight kickboxing before, fight for it. Taking on Xavier Lundy, back and forth MMA.
Yeah, really back and forth. Morris just kind of controlled the pressure a bit more. Like I was like, wow, he cleaned up a lot he seemed a lot more comfortable in this.
Better shape.
Way better shape. And just way more comfortable.
I think we commentated his fight, because that was back when you were doing more commentary for it. Fought kickboxing, I believe, because I remember his Legend of Zelda tattoo. We were talking about that on the mic. So yeah, it very, very much improved from him those past like year and a half since we've seen him. And Xavier Lundy seems like a very young kid. He's out of your boy's gym from Southern Scrap Nation.
Yeah, Daniel.
Daniel. So I'm sure he'll be back, bouncing back, and just another interesting. This one kind of went the distance,
Lundy's
but it
still
was a good
solid.
fight.
He was a really solid dude. Morris just had a bit more composure and just pushed it a bit more during.
Just a little bit more. It was a squeaker of a fight. Speaking of squeakers, Sasha Rockwood versus Talia Cusinelli.
And that was just a tight fight from the get-go, man. And that was like one of those where it's like, we saw it one way, they saw it the other, and that's that. And I told Ty, I was like, shit, fighting just be this way. And this is tough. Like, I had my 2 cents about it, like Talia and Sasha like talked, and they're like, "Hey, that was a great fight. Like, there's nothing but respect between those two. It's great."
Yeah.
So,
I will say people really enjoyed Talia's walkout music because I was looking around during to see if people knew it, and I saw several people in the audience mimicking the dance moves along with the.
My God. Was that my students? I had a row of students.
I don't think it was.
If my students are doing choreographed dances, I'm gonna be.
They were just kind of, and Jason McGinnis was too. Jason was also doing the lasso and shit.
But no, that was a great fight. You know, Sasha showed her experience.
I said it,
and Talia showed that, like, hey, for like a year and a half of training, man, she has a big toolkit to work with.
I said it at the end of that. At the end of that fight, but that fight should go into the hall of judging school. Like, they should make you watch that fight as part of your final exam for judging school
because there's so many back and forths and reversals.
And the elements are subjective. I mean, in terms of what you think effective grappling is on the cage, I think that a lot of people will have a varied opinion on that depending on how much they know about wrestling and grappling.
But I'll give it to Sasha. She still, like, came in on everything. Like, Talia had her aggression on the feet, but Sasha, time and time again, would still, like, she was the one, like, engaging some of those clinch entries, and Talia would be like, and those two were just like two cats in a bag, just back and forth.
For me, obviously, I love Talia. She's a friend of mine, so maybe I'm a little biased, and obviously you may be a little biased too, but I just thought that the first round went to Sasha, and the second round went to Talia barely.
Yes.
And then the third round, Talia landed two head kicks.
And so, on my end of it, like, I see, like, first is Sasha, third is Talia's. The second round was very back and forth. I thought that, like, Talia's, like, the bit more strikes she had along the cage, like if you count, it's like they're almost goddamn dead even.
Well,
for times, like, they pull each other on and off the cage for position. I thought Talia landed more strikes, but then you see how, like, Sasha did the right thing where she really fought for that last position at the end of the round. Like,
she also had a great job of, like, I've also never seen her have abs before.
She looked solid in that fight. Like, she made some good improvements. Like, she looked physically strong, but you still see, like, Talia was still technically savvy to, like, still pull her off. And Sasha did a great job of, when Talia was trying to disengage, Sasha was doing the right things, like repositioning to keep her tight. Correct. Like, and it's like you'll see that with, like, experienced grapplers on the ground, where if a person's on their back, they do know how to pull someone onto them to keep control, where it makes it hard to get up, and then you open up for, like, like submissions and stuff like that off your back. Yeah. And on the wall, Sasha did a good job of pulling Talia back to her, because Talia would try to make space, Sasha would pull, then Talia reverse. And it was like that, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
I can tell you watch the fight.
I asked that cage side for it, and I was just like, fuck, this is a cat fight. Like,
but you watched it back.
I watched it back again, and it was still one of those, like, I kind of felt second and third for Talia.
So the thing about the second round
it's
for
like,
me...
in my opinion, the thing that might have given that second round to Sasha would just because of how she finished out the round. But like, hey, like I said, like, Sasha had nothing but good things to say about Talia. I've got nothing but good things to say about Sasha.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
Sasha fought her fucking ass off.
Yeah,
like, she ate some head kicks like a champ. Talia was like, shit, that she's strong, and I'm like, I can tell.
When I discuss things like this, and I give my thoughts on who won, a lot of times people think that I'm saying what I wish the outcome would have been, or that I'm mad that the outcome was the way it was. But in reality, what I'm saying is that I'm very appreciative of how close the fight was.
It was such a close fight. Yeah.
It is, even the best of judges, if we had them, which we didn't that night, but even the best of judges would
still be like, shit, let me count this in my head a little bit.
Exactly. And I would say that I tend to look at things from the perspective of a jiu-jitsu person, and I also think that the sport is primarily rooted from a jiu-jitsu mindset in its beginnings. So you look at a position where there's two people not on the fence, they're in the actual open, or they're trying to get to the fence, and they're just body locked around each other.
Right.
Who's scoring in that position? Well, a jiu-jitsu-minded, grappling-minded approach would say whoever's got double underhooks.
Right.
And that's what Coach Seth said on the mic that really made me go like, wow, the fact that you even said that makes me think that 99% of judges wouldn't even be looking for hooks. Like, wouldn't be looking to see who's got
looking for the
hooks.
position, fighting back and forth,
and
who's keeping control.
The pummeling in that second round was so back and forth that keeping track of even that would be so hard in the moment as a judge, right? So, I just think that it was the closest fight of the night. Yeah. It was the fight
and it
that
shows that
was the hardest to tell you who
these
won.
girls have just a full, like, toolbox to use. Yeah. And that's what the fight came down to. It was like, goddamn, they were just...
And it was grueling.
They
put each other through hell. They put each other through hell. They were both, like, spent after that. And I mean, I was just really impressed by their ability to go, but I just felt like those last 2 head kicks in the 3rd round were a big statement by Talia. And
yeah, I mean, she's one that
said.
She really does do a good job of like having she has a good gas tank, and she'll push pace with her strikes and stuff like that. So Talia's 2nd MMA fight, Sasha's 4th. It was just a great fight. Back and forth. I mean, shit, what can you do at this point?
Honestly, maybe it'll be a little bit easier for Talia to get
Even Talia said that. She's like, cool, if someone sees that I can lose a fight, they'll take a fight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know that was an issue before, but after that, we had Brandon Bolden, the Killer B, the Killer. He's the newest member of the Elevate tribe, moved out here from the West Coast, taking on Tenarius Dooley from Team Rock. And I've seen the kid in the gym. Seth said that he did some pad work with him.
He was very complimentary about him on the stream. He was saying that he was complimenting his hand speed and his fight IQ, and it showed.
Definitely. I mean, he hit one solid shot on Tenarius, which dissuaded Tenarius off the takedown. And then Tenarius kind of rushed the takedown in close, gets caught in a guillotine.
Yeah.
And we know how those boys at Elevate, we love our guillotines.
He just had it right off the bat. And Tenarius was out on the feet for a second.
Shout out to Jason Collins.
That was such a solid
catch. Now that's a good officiating right there.
That's a catch in the baby moment.
I wish that the camera was firmly on that moment, because that probably could have gone viral. Just that clip of because I see that stuff go viral for Thai fights all the time, where a guy gets elbowed and a ref like dives under him to catch him and stuff.
That was a great catch by Jason.
Great catch, Jason. But good quick fight, and the finishes were just like rolling on. Lots of submissions on this card. Speaking of submissions, the people's main event is what I called it. Travis T-Flex Snyder from Modern Warrior taking on the young Silas Muscat. Quick fight again.
What a wild scramble.
Scramble of a fight. Silas introduces the grappling, and as soon as he does, Travis is the one who takes advantage of the situation.
Yeah, he hopped to his back so quick and lashed it in. Like, even Silas is kind of like, what the fuck just happened?
Right, It's one of those things where we're like, against Tenarius Dooley.
And it's kind of like when you throw the hard punch and you get hit with that counter punch, you're like, where'd that fucking come from? Because you're so focused on what you just threw. That's what happened to Silas, because he felt so like committed to that submission. Once he lost it, he was like just looking to recover. And Snyder's like, no, I'm hunting for submissions nonstop too. Like Snyder fired a submission back when he saw the opening, and Silas was still kind of recovering from losing
the position.
Yeah, that position. Yeah.
I feel like
just a quick little lapse
against Dooley. We saw Snyder on the ground, but it was from a position of like he had already tired out Dooley.
Right.
And it's like, how good is he on the ground? Well, now we know he's good everywhere. He's good on the feet. He's good on the ground, and that kind of lines up with that Modern Warrior camp. They're forming some nice fighters over there, and.
Even Rockstar himself having a great resurgence.
Exactly.
As of late. It's showing with his fighters too. I told him, I was like, man, I don't know what the hell you're doing, but you're doing a great job. Like, it's been wild to see him fight pro for this long, and he's getting better.
Yeah, still getting better, and it's showing in his students too, because he's becoming better coach.
His students are becoming very IQ savvy.
Can't wait to see more from those Modern Warrior guys. I'm looking forward to the return of Tad Collins, but Travis Snyder seems to be their brightest prospect right now, especially in terms of an amateur, now 2-0 as an amateur MMA fighter, and you got to think the next one for him is going to be a big step up in competition. Jamison Thompson made his debut out of the Atlantic MMA against Sawyer Bartlett from Team Rock, and we just watched this fight. Jamison, man, this kid is strong.
Very strong.
Silverback is an apt
Bartlett
nickname.
was very surprised by the strength.
I think so too.
Yeah,
I think so.
Bartlett met him in the locker room, really chill dude, very relaxed. Like, he was there to get to work and fight. But the Silverback came out and just. Wow.
All-American and a Marine is Bartlett. And it's just like, if you go out there and shoot on an All-American Marine, you got some balls on you.
You see, Bartlett was very surprised.
Yeah, because how many people, even in the sparring room, try to shoot on him?
I know.
Especially Jim O.
But he had great composure in that first round. The second round, he took a lot more control of that fight, it seemed. And he was a bit more in that fight. And then the third round is when Thompson came back. I mean, I can't believe that they had such a wrestling match. Is Thompson a wrestling coach? Or was he a collegiate wrestler?
Dude, I don't know.
You guys don't seem like you had any information on him, but from what I saw, I was like, that guy
in his own words, he is a limitless man. So, I mean, if you're a limitless man, you got to know how to wrestle. So
he is a Naruto fan of some kind, I guess.
Yeah,
one of these, Naruto generation?
He said in the because, I was writing the article on him, and I was like, what am I going to say about this guy? So I just reached out to him and just was like, tell me a little bit about yourself. And he's just like, whatever the fight goes, I'm ready. If we got to throw hands, let's go. If we got to wrestle, let's go.
Did he say anything about his grappling experience?
No! He just said he got into martial arts because he wanted to be a limitless man. And to be a limitless man, you have to know martial arts. That's it. That's all he said, Trevor.
What the fuck kind of astronaut farmer shit
And then I saw him after the fight, and I was like, bro, great fight. I was the guy who reached out to you, and he was like, sorry, I had to go full UFC on you.
Oh, my God. You caught him, like, in the zone.
He might just be a full-blown troll. Like, he might just be a brilliant troll.
You caught him, like, full Vision Quest. I think you caught him in the zone, man.
Yeah, exactly. But, dude, he came out there looking like a fucking Bobby Wasabi on HRT. I mean, he just was jacked out and looked like Agent 47.
Just tons of horsepower the whole fight.
And, dude, every time he threw a punch at Bartlett, it was a big deal. Like, Bartlett, like, visibly reacted, almost got knocked down twice. I mean, kid's strong. Jameson Thompson, can't wait to see him fight again because he's an exciting man.
Yeah.
We've just watched Gonzo take on Gabe Muscat, and we were talking about how, Gonzo, he just doesn't have that sense of urgency in there, like it's kill or be killed, because he's... I think he's just been in a lot of situations that are kill or be killed in real life.
And you can tell he really enjoys the fight. Like, who else but Gonzo will sit there, get armbarred, and then go,
just smile.
Hey, man, great armbar, bro.
Right, and I thought he was pretty much firmly winning this fight until he got armbarred. But, that's what the Muscats do. That's their thing. They like to get those crazy slick submissions, and they're great wrestlers and great grapplers, and I think you got to always be aware of that, and that decision to not pass the guard and instead dive into the guard is a lethal decision.
Yeah, that was not the best move for Gonzo, but Gonzo looked great in that fight.
Better than ever, and it's crazy how
when you're kicking someone's legs out, sometimes let them back up on their feet.
That's
all I would say. Yes. I wouldn't have I was like, man, like he wanted to hit the guy. Like, fair enough, the guy's on his back, why not? But he just kind of he should have just let him back on the feet and then kicked him back down.
Every low kick he threw almost knocked Gabe Muscat down.
Muscat was like, okay, what are these?
Yeah. And Gonzo can swing him too, man. I mean, when he first came into the sport, he was just a wild man with power, and then he refined it into the style that he has now. But that power is still there, and he
throws everything
can sling
with power. Yeah,
exactly. So I mean, even in the kickboxing realm, it's like I remember we saw him take on Caleb Hunter, the barber, and got knocked out really quick, came back and won another fight after that. Now he's 0-3 in MMA, and I still think that he's better than a lot of guys I've seen with winning records.
And it's just
and
sometimes it
he's
takes
not
a couple
taking
fights.
bad fights.
It's I remember Harold Hubbard who runs PMAC.
Yes.
Was 2-3 and won a title from a guy that was like 8-0.
Right. Yeah.
And mollywop the guy, and he was his status was 2-3. What? and it goes to show. It's I think we're gonna see that from Gonzo, where he's gonna make that switch. We're gonna see him go on a winning run here. And the Muscats, man, I can't wait to see those guys fight again. When they fight, when they win, they get better. When they lose, they get better. It's great to see those guys fighting.
Still very young, both of them.
Very young.
Silas especially, but Gabe's also still a young man for sure. Aaron Castro in the co-main event taking on Ahmed Kamas. We just watched this one again.
Wow.
What a fight, bro.
So, you told me, man, you just sit down and watch that fight. And I was like, wait, this is the one that was the draw, right? And you went, exactly. And as it went on for the first 2 rounds, I was like, what the fuck am I in store for the third? Because I was in the back with Trevor, Logan, and Jeff, and Saeed. And we are behind the Hyacinth team, when we hear, draw. And we're just like, wait, what the fuck did we miss? Because, we heard the place going nuts, on our walk through the tunnel in the back, and we're like, what the fuck happened? What did we just miss out? Because we were out there for, that third round. We heard the place going nuts. And then we heard draw. And I hadn't seen the fight until now. And I cannot believe that comeback for Aaron Castro. Yeah. That dude gets leaps and bounds better with each
What a boxer he is.
What a boxer. Yeah, what a dog. And then Ahmed Kamis, man, he looked so good in that fight. Those first 2 rounds. He did some great jobs of finishing out with head kicks. He was catching kicks, releasing, kicking the right times. He was doing a great job of mixing up his striking to takedown. Had a hard time holding Castro down.
Very early got to the back and spladled Castro.
Yeah.
And didn't finish.
But Castro was no, that's kind of one of those, it's there's a little bit of technique you get out of there. Yeah. But it's a lot more willpower to get out of there.
And not having your will broken.
Yeah, because a lot of guys Castro's just heart get bigger as that fight went on, because that second round he was mounted, I think, right?
Yes.
Yes.
For a long time.
And then that
in the third round, he got taken down early too.
Early, off the bat. And then as soon as they got back up from that, like, he ripped Camus with this uppercut. Camus went, okay, I need a second. And Castro didn't give him a second.
There was a moment where Camus was on the fence and Castro was just
I was like, man, if there was a different ref there, like, there was a brief moment I felt like it could have been stopped.
Right, yeah.
Now, like, the crazy thing is, like, I can see why they gave it a 10-8. But, however, at the same time, Camus in that first minute was in that fight.
He won the take.
So he got the takedown, and he got a takedown at the very end.
And he took him down right before the bell.
And so that showed that he was in like that minute of a fight in the last second. Not enough for it to be a 10-8. I mean, but man, I can see why, because if they were to allow knockdowns or like a 10-8, then like, you know, a standing 8 count, Camus would have had a standing 8 count along that cage. Yeah. You know, it was a very close point to possibly being stopped right there.
The new unified rules is like one of those things where you're supposed to be a little bit more liberal.
If Camus had maybe gone down from a strike like twice in that round, like we saw him get hit with an uppercut, drops, picks an ankle, pulls Castro down, they're back up, and it happens again, I would say 10-8 all day. But there's like that just enough in the start, just enough at that very finish for it to still be a 10-9. You know, for Castro, but like, what a goddamn dog, Castro!
What a fight, though!
Yeah,
the best fight MMA wise, best fight of the night.
Absolutely,
so back and forth.
Big props to Castro, man. I am really impressed with that kid.
I am too. I mean, I thought that the Emmanuel Simpson fight was impressive, but now I know that it wasn't just a one-off. He is getting that much better with every single fight. And he might be the best boxer in MMA in the amateurs. He had the
best hands all night.
I mean,
that was
every
impressive.
time Seth thinks he's the best boxer in amateur MMA in the Carolinas.
Great job from Rodney Wallace and those guys.
Almost inclined to agree with him. Yeah, a kick fit. I mean, it's a small gym from a smaller town, but I'm from Concord myself, and I know that that's a tough area to find people to train with, and I can't believe Aaron Castro has done so well. And then, of course, in the main event of the evening, your boy, Trevor Loken, coming full circle with Jeff Loken.
So weird.
After so many years, in the same pair of shorts, apparently.
Yeah.
Kind of gross, but...
real gross. But, like, as I said, I think that those might smell like a mat room.
And like you said,
but then Trevor Loken said,
different.
"Sorry, these smell like winning." And I went, "Very fair." There's been a lot of fights won in those fights.
The lucky shorts.
Yeah, but no, like luck had nothing to do with it. Trevor is just one of those kids where it's been in his head. Well, a kid, he's like almost a man now. He's in his early 20s, but since he was a legitimate child, he was like, "I'm going to be a fighter." And that has been his mindset, like, the whole time. And you see it, and he gets better with each fight. Like, his fights aren't very long, but, I see a little bit of the right improvements.
They're getting shorter.
Time. Yeah. and I told him, I was like, hey, we got to keep training you to get ready for, 5-minute rounds. You have to be ready for that. Because, everyone has finishes until Bellator or the UFC.
This is the hardest guy he's fought thus far, and it looked easier than ever for him.
Yeah, and even me, I was expecting, Trevor called it, he was like, I'll be surprised if this guy gets out in the first. Me as a coach, I'm confident in Trevor's finishing abilities. But I respect that team, a ton, and I'm expecting, I was expecting a second or third round finish.
It's fucking highest in MMA. It's Kevin Peraza, a guy who's got 12 amateur fights.
And he has an all-star corner.
Right.
And I'm just man, I was like, it's Tom, Kevin, and Tony. Those guys are just the perfect corner together.
Exactly.
And it's one of those things where I was like, hey, I was thinking a third round stoppage. But that was just me. But Trevor's nah, first round. That's it. And he's one of those kids, man. It's so funny. You don't have to teach him how to fight.
He blasts.
You just have to fill in gaps and teach him patience. And just off the bat, took the fight to him.
Started off with a hell of a cross. Landed clean across the bridge. Right here,
yeah, and he runs with punches big time. And he has to learn that patience. But you can see Peraza was ready to sweep along the cage, get the hip toss. But Trev didn't give it up.
And Trevor's really good on the ground also.
He does all his jiu-jitsu over at Gracie Raleigh. His brother gives him all the MMA. Those two train in the garage together all the time.
Right.
I'll see Trevor maybe once or twice a month. And he'll hop into practice and I give him little things to work on. Hey, look at it this way. Jeff Loken's always in his ear and he's getting his jiu-jitsu done over at Gracie Raleigh. That kid is a damn handful on the mat. Mm-hmm. People see him for his finishes on the feet, but he's a damn handful on the mat.
He proved it. I mean, to go through a guy on the ground like Kevin Peraza, who comes from a grappling based program, and to make it look that easy, it's no easy task.
No, none. And hey, that's Trevor. He's just committed to being a pro, man. He just made a great big kid move, like restored a house and sold it, so he has money to sit on to train full time.
Nice.
So,
do you think he goes pro, or do you think he sits around?
I told him I think that he needs to have he needs to be tested. Like, we got to see what he needs to work on. But I mean, if you keep winning, then you let the kid go pro.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Man.
But I was like, hey man, I'm not much of his full-time coach. Just Jeff and I have good chemistry, around each other because, and I've known them for so long. So I was like, oh, I'm around for you guys. What do you need? But ultimately, he's going to choose when he goes pro. I've given my 2 cents, but he's going to choose when he goes pro.
Hell of a fight for him, for sure.
Yeah, and it's one of those, I was like, shit, if you want to, I guess go for it.
Yeah, I'm sure that he will be back at Fight For It as long as he's not immediately going to go pro. I'm sure they'd like to have him back because that's 2 back-to-back electric fights from him.
Him fighting either Castro or Camus would be a great fight.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I think that Castro is a really great fight for him because it's here's a guy who's just a little bit more refined on the feet than Trevor, and can probably test him in that realm if he tries to sprint at him.
Yeah.
But I mean, it all depends on your on your genetic makeup. And
Trevor also fights where the fight's at.
I agree. Yes,
and
that's a hard thing.
And it's when I said, when I work with him, we just work on filling the gaps on stuff. And so, but that kid fights where the fight goes. Everything he's doing as a fight is from a fight to win standpoint. He's doing everything to win. So, and he's got a bigger toolbox than he shows.
Yeah, I think that because, like you said, he hasn't been tested yet, there's always something more he can show us because he's probably got something up his sleeve.
He and his Jeff are very familiar with this Gaethje funk of how they fight. Jeff was much more of a striker and pressure based. He was a football player, and people thought he was a college wrestler because of his pressure, and he would just spear people with a football tackle as a takedown, and it's very similar to how they can create these through just so much resiliency, they can always push themselves out of positions.
Yeah.
And they always fight back in for a position.
And certain people can take that further than others. You might have a style like that and get tested early in your career, but you might also be like a Derek Brunson who can just sprint at people and win fights up until you get to the top 5 in the world. I mean, until Israel and Rob knocked him out the first time, it was he was just sprinting at people and destroying them. So, I mean, I could very easily see Trevor destroying people, just sprinting at them and blitzing them because he's such a good, solid blitzer, and he's just so unafraid to throw down.
Yeah.
And that's a rare quality. There's not a lot of those bite down on your mouthpiece and swing it out guys left in this sport.
It's in their DNA.
And not only is he that kind of guy, he's also got fight IQ, which those 2 things really never go hand in hand. But he has a really solid fight IQ.
He's been around it for so long, and like I said earlier, since he was in high school. He was in a mat room with pro fighters, just slanging and banging. He spent time at Rufus Sport. He's seen what pro fighters need. He sees what they need.
Probably won't be long until we see him go to a bigger gym.
He likes where he's at.
Really?
He even said that he enjoys the technical training that he gets around here. Because he said that what he likes is he was I want to go to places for sparring. He's one of those he and his brother will spar anybody, and they always look for better sparring partners. But they know hey, if you have people that are technically working with you on their technical backgrounds, you need that, you do. And he knows that sometimes it's easy to be overlooked at those bigger schools. So he understands hey, those places are good for sparring.
Did you see the UFC? Any of the UFC?
Did not, because we tried to go to a Buffalo Wild Wings afterwards, and we got there for the Jan Sterling fight to start, but they were kicking people out because they were understaffed. So we missed the co-main and main event of that. So I haven't seen those fights yet.
It's all right. I'll tell you that Volkanovski versus Korean Zombie was extremely one-sided, and it was a classic case of Korean Zombie being way too tough for his own good.
Right.
But Sterling and Jan and Khamzat versus Burns were incredible fights.
I heard. I do want to go back and see that Khamzat Burns fight. And I want to rewatch all those.
Khamzat versus Burns might be the fight of the year. Certainly the round of the year is that third round. Yeah. So far, we're still kind of early in the year, first quarter anyway. But I think that was the fight that had me like the most on edge. And that was right when we got out. I went to my car and instantly loaded up the stream and started watching.
Yeah, we tried, but
but yeah, I would definitely go back and rewatch those fights. Mackenzie Dern and Tisha Torres had a decent fight back and forth. A lot of people thought Tisha won. I definitely thought Mackenzie won, but that was kind of a very similar theme of the judging of the night. A lot of people disagreed with the judging.
I heard that about like the Sterling and Jan fight.
I think Sterling handedly won the first round, and the first 3 rounds really, but it really comes down to how you see that first round, I think, and I think it was all Sterling. I think that Khamzat and Burns is a lot harder to judge, way closer than Sterling and Jan was, but I also thought that Burns had that one, so I disagreed with the decision on that one, which is interesting because going into the fight, I thought it would look easy for Khamzat because I just thought Gilbert would just fall into a brawl and get into a brawl and not have the same kind of power that Khamzat did, but he just brawled him in many scenarios.
People say that Khamzat never really has a game plan for fights. He just wants to go in and just be the better fighter.
Now I will say there's a hilarious picture of Khamzat from this weekend of him and Darren Till sitting.
I did see that. That's pretty
fucking
cool.
hilarious.
I've
never seen anybody do that.
That should be a T-shirt.
Of course, yeah. I've never seen anybody get on the cage during the walkout, but
Charles Crazy Horseman is probably the only other person.
Yeah, that's actually right. You're right.
America's Khamzat.
But yeah, I really enjoyed what I did see of the UFC, but mostly this weekend was all about Fight For It, and it was a great show. I think we had a great time. I know that you have plans for all of the fighters that you had fighting on the card and what's next for them, but I don't think right now we have anything on the horizon as far as you have fights coming up or tournaments coming up.
Let me see. May is a bunch of weddings. April 23rd, we've got some people doing like a smoker. June 11th will be Walker Vivian's first fight card in Florence, South Carolina. Really excited for that. He's doing a PKB that morning, so I'm going to have like 3 or 4 people on the PKB and I think 3 people on like the main fight card in the evening. So that's our next busy night. Just going to take... April 23rd, going with Leilani and Tiago to Greenville, South Carolina for Showcase.
Oh, Showcase.
Yeah, because Leilani's like our little homie and we helped her get a fight.
Of course,
and so she asked me to come along and I went, hell yeah, dude. Like, I'm there.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
And then, so that's around the corner. I don't think there's anything coming up in May as far as fights. Like maybe a PKB or something for us.
Yeah.
And then June 11th, Walker Vivian. And I think we're trying to find Talia another MMA fight in June.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I think that there will be, during the summer this year compared to last year, there's going to be a lot more shows. Yeah. And already, I've done more shows this year than we did last year.
Oh, yeah.
By far.
By a lot,
I have, something coming up, not this weekend, but next weekend in Maryland, and then I'll be doing a Smash tournament.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, definitely doing commentary for one I haven't done since August, but there's also been less tournaments for.
Well, we're going to
like
check out some pro wrestling this weekend and see if we can't finagle our way to some pro
that'll be
wrestling
fun.
entertainment, man.
Yeah. We're going to go see our boy Bobby Wasabi to do a little bit of wrestling.
Yeah.
I think that'll be a really fun time. And then the 30th, I'm doing Toro Cup commentary.
That's right. Yeah, I've got. We're doing an open house at my spot because
I'll be there after that.
I've got my little space that I rent out. We just finished our renovations. Got the back wall finished up, and gonna have Walker Vivian come to a seminar. Dalton's gonna do a plate sale there.
Oof.
Because I was like, hey man, how do we get some foot traffic in? And I was like,
Dalton's,
man, I know like people buy out Dalton's place. So
food is
like a pickup spot.
Incredible, man.
Yeah, we're gonna get a few vendors in there set up. Maybe throw some fights on the projector.
Aloha Barbecue. Be sure if you're in the Raleigh area and you're friends with Dalton Too Strong Taylor, look out for those plate sales because that shoyu poke and the galbi and the other shit that he makes, it is phenomenal food. I can't wait for him to get a food truck or whatever he wants to do with that. The man can throw down in the kitchen for sure.
So I want to give some love out to my boy Dalton.
I think that we'll have stuff to talk about next week. I think there is a UFC card coming up this weekend, a small fight night. I know Vicente Luque is fighting on there. We'll be back next week with the 10A Fightcast, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and thanks so much to Fight For It for having us out for your most recent event. I really appreciated being on commentary, and I'm sure Trevor appreciated the experience as a coach.
I love coaching at those shows.
Right.
Yeah. No, they're very easy to work with. Yeah,
absolutely.
They put on a good show. It's never a bad time. My students love going to.
Can't say enough good things about them. So thank you again to Fight For It and Badge of Honor and all of our other sponsors that help make the show what it is. Until next time, guys, enjoy yourselves and the fights.
Later.